For my equity action plan, I have three primary topics that I will be assessing. First being equitable assessment. I have two subcategories, which are language difference versus disorder and holistic assessment. Second topic I'll be discussing is strength-based approach, and the third is diverse materials. Distinguishing language difference from disorder. Often bilingual students are over-referred to SLPs, and I believe it's often due to typical bilingual acquisition that is misunderstood, such as code switching, silent period, fossilization, and interference. I wanted to provide this wheel. It gives a great overview of what goes into assessing between language difference and disorder. I will use informal assessment in naturalistic contexts in both language 1 and 2 if the student is bilingual. I will also conduct observations with various team members in classroom, home, and other daily environments. I would also conduct proficiency testing in language 1 and 2. Second subtopic, individualized and holistic assessment. I will interview family, caregivers, teachers, and others in the student's close environment. I would want to know, does the family use similar dialect? Does the family speak language 1 at home? What is the student's learning styles? Avoidance, routines, practice opportunities, modeling, all of this can help inform assessment and care. I will get to know the student and family to better understand any variables that may be a barrier to the student, such as motivation, personality, anxiety level. If the student is anxious or stressed, that can hinder language acquisition, pace, as well as socioeconomic status. Equitable assessment obstacles. I found a few. The first I wanted to point out was standardized tests are normed for monolingual English speakers. I will use standardized testing as just one data point in assessment. I will use other assessments that are dynamic. I would use language samples and interviews. Second obstacle would be lack of interpreters for bilingual students. I will make an effort to build a network of interpreters preemptively. Thirdly, family barriers to interviews. Families may be too busy to come and meet with me. To help amend this, I will offer flexible communication formats, such as talking on the phone, Zoom, email, or even meeting outside of typical hours. Connecting equitable assessment to multicultural education. I wanted to start with two quotes from Nieto and Bode. First being, what might multicultural philosophy mean in the way that schools are organized? For one, it would probably mean the end of rigid forms of ability tracking, which inevitably favors some students over others. Secondly, policies and practices such as inflexible grouping, inequitable testing, monocultural curricula, and unimaginary pedagogy contradict this lofty aim. Speech and language assessments are normative. They're typically normed on a narrow demographic of monolingual, middle-class white students. This has led to the misdiagnosis of children who fall outside of the norm created. I have a quote from a study conducted by Buster. She says studies highlight how cultural, linguistic, and normative test biases disproportionately affect children who speak non-mainstream dialects, are multilingual, have disabilities, or are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Her study advocates for integration of informal tools to ensure equitable access, diagnosis, and intervention for all children. Implementing informal assessment and doing so in all languages the student speaks relates to Nieto and Bode's idea that rigid testing does not align with multicultural philosophy. Strength-based approach. I'm beginning with a quote by Dr. Valerie B. Fleming. A strength-based approach addresses the whole child and what they bring to the table. A deficit approach considers what the child lacks and how they stand up next to monolingual English-speaking peers. Another quote by Dr. Ann Larson. When a student is described as an English language learner, what we know is that they are learning English. What we don't know is what language they speak as their native tongue. What does this child bring to the table? What if we flipped this and started with what the child brings to the table? I thought this was a great overview of the strength-based approach. And I have an example here. A deficit approach might sound like Jean is learning English, versus a strength-based approach would sound like Jean is a native French speaker who is in the process of acquiring English. As far as implementation of strength-based approach, I would talk with students. I want to know what's important to them. What do they feel like their strengths are? I would target phonemes relevant to the child's life, such as a sound in a loved one's name. I would create word lists based on students' personal and academic interests, identify areas where the student excels, and help students recognize their own strengths. Some obstacles I see to the strength-based approach are structural language is deficit-based. IEPs require deficit framing to qualify a student for services. The system is built to identify what is wrong with a student. I will use deficit language when necessary for qualification, while leading reports with at least 2 strengths. Another obstacle I can foresee is colleagues and collaborators who don't share the same strength-based framework. To amend that, I will model the language in meetings and times of collaboration with colleagues. I will start sentences with what the child can do rather than what they can't. My last topic is diverse materials. Beginning with another quote by Dr. Valerie B. Fleming. Equity in special education means creating broad representation in your materials. Representation means leaders reflect the demographic of the student body, and we can incorporate representation in our materials too. When I'm saying materials, I'm talking about anything we're using in speech therapy, such as toys, books, description cards, etc. They should be racially, culturally, and gender diverse. And I have a couple visual aids there for you. Obstacles I foresee with diverse materials. Firstly, budget constraints. I will slowly replace materials strategically, prioritizing the gaps that I see. I will find budget-friendly or DIY options. Second obstacle I foresee is a limited availability of some representations. I will make these materials myself if I cannot find them for purchase. Third obstacle I foresee is I may not notice my own gaps in diverse materials. To address this, I will conduct a yearly inventory so I can see where the gaps in representation are in my materials and prioritize them. Relating diverse materials and multicultural education. Nieto and Bode state that the multicultural approach is pervasive. It can be seen in the process by which books, audiovisual aids, and multimedia materials are acquired. Using materials that are culturally, ethnically, and racially diverse can extend the pervasiveness of multicultural education. It is a visual reinforcement of multicultural education, extending beyond just pedagogy and multicultural discussions. And there are my references. Thank you so much.